Environmental Committee, and fellow DuPage County Senators Susie Glowiak and Senator Laura Ellman. So thank you all for, also we have with the Village of Willowbrook, Trustee Gail Neal, Paul Ogerio, Umberto Davi, and Sue Berglund. And we have from the community group that you'll hear from Stop Sterigenics, Steve Leopoldo of Darien, one of the leaders of Stop Sterigenics, and another of the leaders, Gabriela Tejada Rios. We have filed legislation. On Friday, we had very positive news, and I want to thank Governor Pritzker, the Illinois EPA, Attorney General Kwame Raoul, and DuPage County State's Attorney Bob Berlin. They have actively been pursuing, on the legal end of this issue, community health, community safety on our behalf here in and around the Willowbrook area pertaining to with that seal order on Sterigenics. The IEPA's decision was a positive first step, but it's a temporary first step. We need to act in the legislature here on a permanent basis. We need to make sure proper policies and protections are in place to ensure that we do not have a situation like this again. And we need to ensure the health and well-being of residents in and around the Willowbrook area. And I call for a legislative solution to permanently close this facility. I've filed 3 pieces of legislation, a bill, Senate Bill 1852, which requires notice to all affected property owners when there is a leak of ethylene oxide. We had a large-scale leak in our Willowbrook area, and no one was notified as of such. Senate Bill 1853, which is going to reopen the permit for a new public hearing process of the Sterigenics facility. In 1854, and most importantly, this would ban fugitive emissions in and around the state of Illinois. Fugitive emissions are uncontrolled emissions in the sterilization process. They do not go through any pollution control devices. This is really the main reason why we have such high readings in and around the Willowbrook area of ethylene oxide, because we have these uncontrolled emissions. We need to ban these uncontrolled emissions of ethylene oxide. I believe that these are bipartisan common sense bills. I am thrilled to have colleagues standing with me in this endeavor, and I want to turn this over to someone that has reached out and has been just a wonderful partner and colleague in working on ensuring public health, Senator Belinda Bush.
Thank you, Senator Curran, for work on this issue. And thank you, of course, to Governor Pritzker and the Illinois EPA for taking actions to shut down operations at Sterigenics. But as you know, this move is temporary, as Senator Curran had said, at least until further measures are put in place to protect the health and safety of nearby residents. We need to make sure the legislation that I'm sponsoring with Senator Curran passes as soon as possible to protect the Willowbrook community. But that's not enough. There are 2 facilities in Lake County that are currently emitting ethylene oxide. I've called on the U.S. EPA to take action and take emission levels and test emission levels, and it's well past time for the EPA to do so. We deserve to know if the air that we are breathing is safe. That's why I'm introducing a resolution demanding that the U.S. EPA begin testing for ethylene oxide around Medline and Vantage in Lake County immediately. I'll continue fighting for answers and working to pass legislation that protect our communities from harmful emissions. But let me be clear, I am the chair of the Environmental Committee. We are certainly working closely with the IEPA, with the Governor's Office, and Senator Curran, who has been a champion on this issue for his community. I am honored to join him in that fight, and thank you to all of you that are here today. And I'd also like to thank and introduce Ann Williams. She's the chair of the Environmental Committee in the House, and of course, she is deeply invested in this public health issue. Ann?
Thank you, Senator Curran, Senator Bush, and everyone here today. As the Senator mentioned, I am chair of the Energy and Environment Committee in the House, And today at 3 p.m., we will be holding a hearing to discuss the Sterigenics issue and the issue of EO beyond Sterigenics. I'm here simply to stand in support of the residents and the impacted communities, and to let you know I and many of my colleagues in the House are committed to finding the right legislative solution to keep your community safe. Thank you, and I'll see you today. Next up, I don't know.
I would like to now turn the microphone over to one of the leaders from Stop Sterigenics, Steve Leopoldo from the neighboring village of Darien.
Thank you. Thank you to all the legislators who are stepping up to help protect my community. As Senator Melinda Bush said, the U.S. EPA has not been doing its job, and we need to demand answers. And I'm very thankful for our legislature, for our Governor J.B. Pritzker, and Attorney General Kwame Arul for stepping up and protecting our community, doing everything in their power to make sure that these fugitive emissions of ethylene oxide are going to be an issue of the past, so my community can start healing and move forward with our lives. Thank you.
Can I have your name again, please, sir?
Steve Leopoldo, Leopoldo.
And finally, I want to bring up another of the leaders of Stop Sterigenics and a community member, Gabriela Tejada Rios. Gabriela?
For 34 years, the residents of Willowbrook, Illinois, have seen our parents, spouses, brothers, sisters, children succumb to leukemia, breast cancer, lymphoma, and other cancers. We've held our spouses' hands as they've taken their last breaths. We've given our parents medicine in an attempt to relieve their pain and suffering. We've cradled our children in our arms while their bodies were ravaged by cancer and tumors. We've grieved for the unborn children that we've lost. For a long time, we were in the dark as to the cause of our anguish, and now we know. Now we know that for 34 years, our community has been exposed to a mutagenic carcinogen known as ethylene oxide 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. My home is located 0.2 miles from Sterigenics, a mere 3-minute walk. Every morning when I wake up and walk past my daughter's room, I glance out my window and see the smoke rising from their building on Midway Drive, dissipating into our air. 5 days a week, I drive my eldest daughter to and from school, passing both facilities on the way. Sometimes we're held up by traffic of the semis, and we're forced to stop and wait a few minutes. I look over at Sterigenics buildings, and I see that same carcinogenic smoke permeating our sky, permeating our lungs and bodies with every breath that we take. I look at my 12-year-old daughter, her beautiful curls, her hazel eyes. She breathes in a carcinogen while she's at school, when she's at home, when she is sleeping. A carcinogen that is known to mutate genes, and she has been doing so for nearly all of her life. And I'm overcome with guilt, helplessness, and fear. And this has become my norm. This has become the norm for every parent in Willowbrook, in Darien, in Burr Ridge. Our story is not unique. Waukegan, Gurnee, McCook, Chicago, all house facilities that are poisoning the residents with ethylene oxide emissions. These companies are well aware of the catastrophic effects of the chosen operations. This cannot become our permanent norm. We cannot continue to allow companies such as Sterigenics to prioritize their profits over the lives of people. We need a permanent legislative solution to protect the people of the state of Illinois and generations to come. Thank you.
Any questions?
Can you talk about the bill that you filed to reopen the permit process for public hearings? What would that look like?
Senate Bill 1853, so that would reopen the cap permit. It's going to mandate that the public hearing occur in the county in which the facility is located. We're going to take this process out of the administrative process here in Springfield, open it up to residents to voice their concerns, and let the Illinois EPA hear directly from the most affected of individuals before issuing any permit to continue to operate. These permits are issued on a 3-year basis, so they come up for renewal every 3 years, and a public hearing is a mandate of the permit renewal process prior to issuance.
What year is the Sterigenics permit on in that 3 years?
2020, it'll be expired May of 2020 and would need to be reissued by June of 2020.
Is there no regulatory process for a permit revocation?
There is a process for permit revocation that I believe is lacking in my discussions with the Illinois EPA. However, what we've seen from the Illinois EPA on Friday is a real positive step in that direction, and that is a part of that process.
Senator, we understand that the firm Sterigenics may be petitioning the Federal EPA to reopen. What do you comment to that?
The Federal EPA has been a complete failure throughout this entire 6-month process. From the first time, this all started with a Federal EPA report and notification, and we thank them for that. And there was such hope and optimism when this process started 6 to 7 months ago with first communication from the US EPA. And since then, it has been nothing but missed deadlines, you know, having to go back and retest because of mistakes, and you know, their process has just been replete with failure and has really let down the local community. I've been in contact. I know many of our U.S. senators and our Congress representatives in the area have been really voicing this concern, I believe effectively. So if it's not surprising that that's the route Sterigenics is going to choose to go. However, we, as the state of Illinois, have an obligation to protect our residents. That comes first and foremost. We have an ability to act here that in a manner that cannot be overruled or superseded by the US EPA, and I believe we're going to do that.
What kind of, I'm sorry.
Sir, go ahead.
Thanks. What kind of communications have been between Sterigenics and the folks affected, the neighbors?
Completely lacking. You know, early on, it was hopeful that they would take an active role as a community member in this process, and that has not been the case. They have basically shut the community out, and they have not engaged.
Not even an I'm sorry?
No.
Senator Bush and Representative Williams, you can weigh in on this also. Do you think that there is political will to fast track these 3 bills? Because obviously, I mean, the people here would probably say it's time sensitive.
You know, I think that's what we believe, and I think if you look at the actions that were taken by the governor, our Attorney General Kwame Raoul and the IEPA in the sealing of Sterigenics, I think that was a pretty serious move forward, and that should really serve as a message that we intend to move this as, certainly, you know, as quickly as we can. Obviously, legislation, you know, sometimes there are, you know, pragmatic pieces to it. We want to make sure that we get this right. But I can tell you certainly for myself, and I believe I'm speaking for Ann too, but you're welcome to come up. We certainly plan on moving this as quickly as possible. This is a very serious issue, but we want to make sure that we get it right.
Do you want the IEPA to take any actions regarding Medline or Vantage, or do you feel like the Sterigenics situation is far more serious?
So I think that the Sterigenics situation became known a lot earlier and is a very serious issue. There's certainly questions about, we have a plant that does the same kind of sterilization in Waukegan, certainly questions there. Questions about, there's another plant that uses ethylene oxide, not for sterilization, but in the manufacture. They make products that are used in shampoo, those kinds of things. Yeah, we believe it's very serious. We want to make sure, that's why I'm introducing a resolution and calling on the US EPA to do the study and do the testing, because we really we need to know. We need to know what our air quality is, and we need to know it now, enough dragging your feet. So I do think we're going to do everything that we can to make sure that legislation moves quickly but responsibly.
Any deadline, Senator Curran? Would you like to see this done by,
Yes,
I don't know, 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks, a month?
You know, there's no artificial deadline. You know, we have a process here. I believe we have a process that can move in an expeditious manner. But while I have lived this the last 6 months, and several of my colleagues have, certainly my fellow colleagues from DuPage County have lived this for the last 6 months, you know, there's an education process here with the rest of the legislature, and that's taking place right now.
And not that we're implying in any way, shape, or form that our predecessors didn't do their jobs or should have done it differently, but both Ann and I are newly in this General Assembly. So we are new chairwomen of the Energy and Environmental Committee. So I think that, since we're there, you definitely have our commitment that we're going to do everything we can to move legislation forward, quick way, of course, but in a way that we're really making sure that we're getting at the issues.
Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.